sea and sky. I have heard my people cry, all who dwell in dark and sin, my hand will save. I who made the stars of night, I will make their darkness bright. Who will bear my light to them? Whom shall I send? Here I am, Lord. Is it I, Lord? I have heard you calling in the night. I will go, Lord, if you lead me. I will hold your people in my heart. I, the Lord of snow and rain, I have borne my people's pain. I have wept for love of them, they turn away. I will break their hearts of stone, give them hearts for love alone. I will speak my word to them. Whom shall I send? Here I am, Lord. Is it I, Lord? I have heard you calling in the night. I will go, Lord, if you lead me. I will hold your people in my heart.
So, good morning, my friends. Today I am focusing on the idea of priesthood, not exclusively what we call the priests, because all of us, all Christians, share in the common priesthood in Christ. Therefore, in that sense, this is applicable to everyone. So we will start with a prayer today. I'll just say the prayer, and you can join me. Dearest Lord, teach me to be generous. Teach me to serve you as to deserve, to give and not to count the cost, to fight and not to heed the wounds, to toil and not to seek for rest, to labor and not to ask for any reward, save that of knowing that I am doing thy will. So to have a reference to the life of Ignatius, we go back to his time at Montserrat. Montserrat, was a sanctuary dedicated to Our Lady. And therefore he goes there on pilgrimage, and he spends a long time in prayer. And of course, with the consent of his confessor, he makes in writing a general confession of all his sins so that he can start anew, forget the past and start anew. And then he asks the permission of the confessor to start this new life by giving up his horse and hangs up his sword and his dagger in the church near the altar of the Blessed Virgin Mary. And so that he puts on this new dress that he had acquired somewhere as a beggar. And so he starts a new life. So as a matter of fact, on the eve of the Annunciation of our Blessed Lady in the year 1522 at nightfall, unobserved by anyone, he approached a beggar and taking off his own costly garments, gave them to the beggar. He then put on the pilgrim's dress he had previously bought and hastened to the church, where he threw himself on his knees before the altar of the Blessed Mother of God, and there, now kneeling, now standing, with staff in hand, he passed the entire night. Though he will not be ordained a priest for another 15 years, his missionary orientation starts here. He starts preaching, that is, sharing his own spiritual experience in simple words, but realizes that to be taken seriously by the people, especially by the so-called experts, he has studied theology and also be ordained. And even after his ordination, as a matter of fact, he waits and prays for a whole year before he dares to say his first mass. Therefore, his quest for the priesthood, so to speak, was actually linked to his mission. Today, I wanted to focus on the theme that we are called to mission, all of us, to which this determines our life. We have felt called to become priests in the society of Jesus. I propose not an elaborate theology of the priesthood here, but only a way of considering the priestly dimension of Jesuit identity and mission in the light of our founding inspiration. We have in mind several concrete issues that affect the life of the society in many parts of the world. Since Second Vatican Council, the Church has undergone many changes which have also been felt within the society. After Vatican II, for instance, more involvement of the people of God in the mission of the Church, rediscovering their own common priesthood, and more importantly, also the role of the bishop. But we still have our own charism, of course, as religious, whether they are Jesuits or belonging to other religious congregations. For the Jesuits, our congregation 34 had a special decree on the priesthood. This whole talk is practically a quotation of that, not the full decree, but extracts from it, because that really helps us a good understanding of what it means to be a priest in mission. Of course, women religious and lay people who may be following the retreat may not celebrate the sacraments as the priests do, as the ordained priests do, but they share in the common priesthood and can do all other priestly services. So that all that I am saying here also applies to them, and not merely narrowly to the priests, to the so-called ministerial priesthood. So, what is the role of the Christians in the church? The letter of St. Paul to the Hebrews says that Christ is a merciful and faithful high priest in the service of God, who makes a sacrifice of atonement for the sins of the people. Through their baptism, Christians participate in Christ's priestly work of reconciling the world to God and are called to mediate this reconciliation in their lives. So this applies to all Christians, but especially as Jesuit religious, we give a particular expression to this dignity through our consecration and our apostolic mission in the society. Ours is a ministry of reconciliation. Because as soon as we think of the priesthood, we immediately think of the Eucharist. But here, the focus is on our ministry of reconciliation, of bringing people together and reconciling people with God, with each other. It has not only a spiritual, but also therefore a social dimension. So it is more than just celebrating Eucharist. Unfortunately, what happens, of course, is as we think of a priest, we think only about the Eucharist and sort of narrow down his ministry, so to speak. By their ordination, Jesuit priests also share in the ministerial priesthood of the people of Christ through the gifts of the Spirit, unceasingly builds up his church, guides his people, that is Jesus Christ, through the pastoral office and leads them into the kingdom of his Father. The companions of Jesus who offer themselves to the church or priestly ministry do so because they discern this as the will of God, which the church confirms by ordaining and commissioning them for ministerial service in its name. For those who are not formally ordained priests, by their very baptism, they're also given this ministry, this perspective of being priests of God. Jesuit priesthood, therefore, is a gift from God for universal mission. By putting themselves as Jesuits directly at the service of the Pope, the first Jesuits expressed their readiness to be sent wherever there was hope of the greater glory of God and the help of souls. Ignatius and his first companions, therefore, placed their priestly ministry not at the service of a bishop's pastoral care for a particular diocese, but at the service of the sovereign pontiff or the service of the universal church, open to any sort of work anywhere. The link to the Pope also gives them a certain freedom from local control, the local bishops, for instance. The apostolic letters of Paul VI, Paul III, and Julius III popes approve a whole series of activities proper to the Jesuit priests, ministries of the word and ministries of interiority. There is much more spirituality, ministries of reconciliation and teaching, ministries of sacramental service, teaching catechism to children and the unlettered, ministries of social concern. So you see the number of ministries of which sacramental service is only one small part. Therefore, this can apply to all who are not ordained, formally ordained priests also. These characteristic activities of the first companions are the archetypes of Jesuit priestly service as exercised on behalf of the Church's mission, and they continue to inspire the society today to undertake a program of integral evangelization concerned with the good of the whole human person. The only work that non-ordained religious cannot do is sacramental service. The focus on education, as far as Jesuits are concerned, it comes much later, but it's actually a focus not strictly on education as such, but on the formation of youth to help them humanly, spiritually, and sometimes even economically. Because education can they prepare them for their ministry, for their life in the world. Therefore, the Jesuits widened their ministry beyond the mere sacramental ministry also by opening schools, colleges, and pastoral centers and so on everywhere. Since the foundation of the society, Jesuits have exercised their ministry most particularly where the needs are the greatest, where there are not others to minister to these needs, and where the more universal good may be found. So here you find three kind of points: where the needs are the greatest, where there are not others, and where the more universal good may be found. So this is what guides their discernment when they want to choose one ministry or the other. This spirit continues to shape the Jesuits as priests. Their ministry is particularly directed towards those who have not heard the gospel, those who are at the margins of the church or of society, those who have been denied their dignity, those who are voiceless and powerless, those weak in faith or alienated from it, those whose values are undermined by contemporary culture, those whose needs are greater than they can bear. So you'll see a long list of people, whom we don't normally look at, don't consider them precisely because they are on the margins of the church community. Let us ask ourselves, of course, with Jesuit and others, with all our schools and other kinds of ministry, how far are we reaching out to all these kind of people whom I have listed here? Pope Paul VI pointed to our presence at the boundaries between human culture and the gospel. Wherever in the church, even in the most difficult and extreme fields, in the crossroads of ideologies, I am quoting Paul VI, in the front line of social conflict, there has been and there is confrontation between the deepest desires of the human person and the perennial message of the gospel. There have been and there are Jesuits. So he identifies our ministry that we should be found precisely where there is conflict, where we have to bring people together, reconcile, and promote community. Can we say this about our province, our country, to our institutions today? Reach out to the cultural world outside, especially to this kind of people. Do only a few perhaps attempt this? Pope Paul VI does not mean to say that others cannot do such ministry. Actually, they also do, other congregations, but certainly his focus is on the Jesuits and people of the Jesuit spirit here. Within the varied contexts in which the society's contemporary mission is conducted, common tasks are to be found. For instance, how to find words that speak to the men and women of our time who are no longer moved by the Christian message, how to be faithful to the tradition of the church and at the same time interpret it in secularized cultures, how to minister effectively to both the poor and the rich, how to integrate our spiritual ministries with our social ministries, how best to serve in a church in which there are tensions, how to make evangelical poverty part of our contemporary witness, how to mediate between different cultures and groups within the same country, how to enable the church to be truly Catholic in the comprehensiveness and cultural variety of its practice and faith. Finally, how to enable the world to become, in all aspects of its life, the kingdom that Christ proclaimed. So you see a list of uncommon ministries in which we can get involved. By the way, I would like to tell you that all these things I am reading out, they're all practically quotations from a decree on the priesthood of the 34th General Congregation of the Society. So this is a long list. Where are we really present? Except perhaps in the field of education, and in some way we also help the poor. Beyond that, we are not really encountering the cultural world outside and all that we can do in that way. A specific challenge today is to embody Christ's ministry of healing and reconciliation in a world increasingly divided by economic and social status, race and ethnicity, violence or war, cultural and religious pluralism. Therefore, the ministry both of healing, because people do get hurt in this kind of conflicts between different groups, and also the need therefore to be reconciled. Therefore, the ministry of reconciliation is something we have already mentioned this word earlier. The Pope has told us, comes back again. These divisions must be a focus of Jesuit priestly ministry, because Christ's work of reconciliation breaks down the walls of division among peoples in order to create in himself one new humanity. So this is the basic aim of Jesus' mission, to bring all people together. But we are facing precisely divisions of various kinds, economic, political, religious, and somehow how we can overcome these and bring people together. That is the focus of our mission. In the light of our tradition, we can say that no ministry which prepares the way for the kingdom of God, or which helps to arouse faith in the gospel, is outside the scope of Jesuit priests. We have also described the Jesuit mission as engaging under the standard of the cross in the crucial struggle of our time, the struggle for faith and that struggle for justice, which it includes. Therefore, this faith, justice, this sort of provides kind of a framework within which you can eventually group all these other ministries that we have just made a list of. The problem, of course, is that we can ask ourselves today, have we reduced the struggle for justice to merely helping a few poor people, not really addressing the social, political, economic, and cultural structures in the world that make the people poor? that prevent them coming up. So in that sense, we are not addressing the causes, but rather we are trying to help a bit the effects of this kind of conflicts. Our first companions envisaged a universal itinerant ministry of evangelization, teaching works of charity and poverty of life. An evangelical imitation of the apostles, a radical pattern of apostolic discipleship was to be the wellspring for what they did as priests. Under the inspiration of the spiritual exercises, they wanted to be like Christ in giving freely of themselves to anyone in need. They wanted to live like Him who came not to be served but to serve. They wanted to act like Him in preaching to the crowds. They wanted to share His concern for the needs of the poor and the sick, for instance, His miracles. So this way, their focus was on what Jesus Christ did during His lifetime, how He was reaching out to people of different levels, who had different problems and so on. And how much do we really imitate Jesus today, as His companions? That's the question that we have to ask ourselves. Of course, we all of us are obviously are working in different local churches, but wherever they are, Jesuit priests make their apostolic contribution to the life of the local church, but at the same time being faithful to their charism and keeping their freedom for mission. So we serve the local church, but we're not controlled by, let's say, the local, say, diocese administration and so on and so forth. We keep our freedom. Because he is not a diocesan priest, he recognizes that he exercises his ministry in complementary ways. As such, a Jesuit tries to direct what he does as a priest towards those who are not easily reached by the church's ordinary ministry. So we are really people who are, in a way, specialists, who go out of the way, who look for people who are far, who are abandoned, and so on. And this may be intellectuals, migrants, youth who are somehow not at home in the church, non-Christians, in the social and political fields. So there are a lot of areas where we really go out of the way, out of the narrow Christian community to reach out to people who need our services. Just as Jesuit priests form a common apostolic body with brothers, so it's also necessary that they promote and enhance the ecclesial service offered by religious in other communities and by lay men and women who want to share more profoundly in the church's ministry. So therefore, we are also called to collaborate with other religious, with also diocesan priests, and also with lay people, men and women who are in some way want to get engaged, and we can offer, we can show them the way. We can perhaps sometimes offer the leadership or work under their leadership when there are people who take initiatives and so on. Therefore, do we really collaborate with others in the church, or do we simply look at our own particular interests and so on? This is the challenge today. From the Ignatian tradition, Jesuits bring to their ministerial priesthood a profound respect for the ways in which God is already at work in the lives of all men and women. God's action does not begin with what we do. Already in the blessings of creation, God has laid the foundation for what He will accomplish through the graces of redemption. Consequently, in the exercise of their ministerial priesthood, Jesuits try to see what God has already done in the lives of individuals, societies, and cultures, and to discern how God will continue that work. See, this is very important, that we have to see what God has done already in the lives of individuals, cultures, societies, and so on, and then discern God's presence and work, and then collaborate. Therefore, I think this is very, very important, that we are not doing something our little top job, rather we try to see how God is active in the world today and then collaborate with God's actions. The graced character of all human life influences the way in which Jesuit ministerial priesthood is exercised in different areas. It's always aimed at building up the human person in the individual character of each one's life of grace. Secondly, it encourages us to become involved in disciplines which, although they may have no explicitly Christian perspective, are nevertheless central to the way in which human beings understand themselves and the world around them. For instance, the areas of psychology, sociology, anthropology, etc. All these economics, all these are politics, all these are also, we have to get involved. It makes us take a positive attitude towards dialogue with the range of human cultures, the traditions of religious belief. Morality and spirituality fall in the world. Therefore, the need for dialogue with cultures and dialogue with religions. It opens the way to a positive ecumenical commitment since it values the diversity and mutuality of charisms found in the different Christian traditions. Therefore, the importance of ecumenism. It directs our attention towards those who, though they are excluded from power and wealth, are already rich in grace, the poor people. Therefore, all our collaboration with other institutions and so on should not eventually forget our basic commitment to the people who are, in a sense, at the borders, the poor people. The ministries of the word, the ministries named before all others in the formula of our institute, have always been of primary importance for Jesuit priestly ministry. These ministries, which take as many forms as are demanded by our mission, require for their effectiveness profound and dedicated study, especially a thorough knowledge of scripture and tradition, skill in preaching, the human maturity and cultural breadth, the tradition of learned priestly ministry and intellectual excellence. Learned priestly ministry and intellectual excellence, I repeat that, is deeply embedded in our way of proceeding. In the exercise of Jesuit ministerial priesthood, knowledge is not power, but the service of the kingdom. Of course, for the priest, the Eucharist is the center of their life, if you like. Christ's own ministry of words and deeds reached its consummation in the saving mystery of his death and resurrection. So Jesuit priests join the many forms of their ministry of the word to the church's celebration of the Eucharist, by which Christ draws people into his paschal mystery. The word of God is proclaimed in different ways so that all may find their place at Eucharistic and heavenly banquet to the mercy of God. Therefore, the need to adapt our preaching to the kind of audience we are addressing. God desires everyone to be saved and to come to the knowledge of the truth. This is the core of the Society's apostolic preaching, the reality which the Church proclaims at the Eucharist. Here, the risen Lord bestows life and enables the Church to become what it is, the body of Christ. Here too, this least society of Jesus is constantly recreated by our reception of the word of truth and the word of life. Therefore, the importance of also the Eucharistic ministry, both in our own lives as priests and religious, and also the community in which we are serving. In his work as a priest, as well as in encountering the diverse and sometimes conflicting expectations of the people he seeks to serve, he will also receive the warmth of their appreciation as someone who is compassionate and is trying hard to be of service. Lay people have an important role in building up his confidence in his ministry. The young priest will surely recognize that ordination has not taken away his human weakness. Sometimes these first 2 years can be a time when things go wrong and the young priest may be confronted by an unexpected lack of coherence in his life. He may realize that the people he is ordained to give to others is not completely filling his own heart. If he comes through this earlier difficulties, and every Jesuit in some cases dramatically has a strong experience of his sinfulness, it can be a profound moment of grace as he confronts the frailty within which his ministry is exercised. In the words of St. Paul, who himself had to come to his understanding, we have this treasure in earthen vessels to show that the transcendent power belongs to God and not to us. So for we should recognize our own weaknesses, our own emptiness, so to speak, but aware that God is still animating us, is behind us, is giving us word to say, is showing us where to go and what to do and so on. Therefore, we are fulfilling God's, we are being God's arms, so to speak, God's eyes, God's ears in the work which we do, being aware precisely of our own littleness and unworthiness. Therefore, this is a challenge for us. In the years after the final vows, the ordained Jesuit experiences all the pressures and complexities of priestly ministry in the society. He will probably be engaged in a ministry which makes constant and exhausting demands on him. In addition, he may be asked to undertake other responsibilities in the society. He may find that much of his time is taken up with work that is directly neither pastoral nor sacramental, but is a response to the demands of our corporate mission and the broad range of activities proper to our Jesuit vocation. Therefore, these are not peripheral to Jesuit priesthood, but are the acts of service by which we address the apostolic needs of our world. That means, we often hear jokingly said, we don't know what a Jesuit is doing or where he is, etc. Because we may have ideas of what a priest must be doing. But the Jesuits are really open to the world, open to the people, and therefore the needs are so vast, so different, and therefore, but we have to be there where we are needed, and not somehow fit ourselves to some kind of a framework. That way, I think that we have to have this imagination, the freedom to move around wherever the Spirit calls us. So, after all this discourse, I'm giving you some thoughts on which you can reflect today. Therefore, do I really feel that there is a special charism of the Jesuit priests, that as Jesuits, we are called to do certain kind of things compared to priests of other congregations, diocesan priests, male and female religious? How do I see my own goals in life as a priest? Because every congregation, let's say every diocese, they have got their own priorities, their own plans they have made, their own particular charisms and so on, and they all should be encouraged, appreciated, and promoted because the church needs all of them. But in a sense, we also have a special charism, which I would say is not to have a special charism. That in a sense, we are ready to go anywhere to do whatever kind of work is needed at the moment where there's a real need. And so therefore, I think the Jesuits have a kind of a freedom which perhaps some other congregations may not have, not because of their personal say willingness, but because of the framework in which their congregation built up. Therefore, whereas Ignatius was free, go wherever you want, do whatever you do, provided it is for the greater glory of God. And therefore, if you look at our pioneers, look at St. Ignatius, say St. Francis Xavier, St. John de Brito, Robert de Nobili, Besky, and more recently, of course, Father Pedro Orupe. I have mentioned in the beginning mostly the people who have worked in India and Asia. Then, of course, Father Pedro Orupe. We have seen people who are creative, who dare to go to places where other people would hesitate to go, and therefore, and who are open to the inspiration of the Spirit. That should also be our own attitude. And at the conclusion, we can always ask ourselves, now I have been in the society maybe for how many years, I don't know, depending upon our age group, etc. Are there Jesuits whom I look up to in my province or in India, in the world, whom I can look at as models? It is worth asking, let's say. I'm sure that if we really think enough, we would find people whom we admire for a particular approach, a particular mission that they are doing, and so on and so forth. And that can be a source of inspiration for us. So with this, we can during this day, we can also pray a bit. And so eventually, let us say, we are following Jesus and we are imitating him, reaching out to the people. Therefore, the best thing, of course, is that look back on the life of Jesus as our model, and then pick up any scene that strikes you from the life of Jesus. For instance, his call of Matthew the publican. There somebody is there, whom you think is swindling the people by collecting excess taxes and etc., etc. And then he calls him out and sends him. Or Zacchaeus, once again, who was making money in his own way, and yet somehow or other, attracted by Jesus, he climbs up a tree, and there he becomes also a disciple of Jesus. He is reaching out to the sinful women whom people would have rejected in society, the Samaritan woman, the sinners, the woman taken in adultery, and the woman, for instance, washing Jesus' feet with her tears. So therefore, how these women really felt that Jesus will be welcoming them and make bold to approach him, and he reaches out to them. So how open are we to reach out to the people who maybe perhaps were hesitating to come near us because they are wondering how we will receive them and so on? Are we really open to everyone, especially for those who need us? And then finally, we can also think about the example of Jesus. I always bring this thought whenever I have an opportunity. Ultimately, on the last day of his life, in one single day, Jesus shows us what it means to love. First of all, he gives them a new commandment: love one another as I have loved you. And then in that day, he also shows what loving means. He starts the evening by serving. He washes the feet of the apostles. He becomes a servant, a humble servant, washing the feet of his own disciples. Then the second gesture, he shares food, bread and wine, making them into his own body and blood. And the third gesture of love is precisely he is offering himself, sacrificing himself, loving us unto death. So in these three gestures, he explained to us what the love of the other means: service, sharing, and self-gift. Let this be also our motto, that in our own life, how we can live like Jesus. And that way we will be authentic priests, where they are lay people or ordained priests, that our basic priesthood we can exercise if we are faithful to these three ways of loving that Jesus has taught us. Thank you.
Good morning, friends. Yesterday, I mentioned to you about the milestones that we could take for our prayer: recall an event, relive an event, relish and thank the Lord. Yesterday, in his talk, Father mentioned about certain significant people who have walked into our lives, and those people have contributed to our growth. So it will be nice also, along with the events that we take, we also take the number of people who have walked into our lives using the same methodology. That is, recall the person and relive what he has done and thank the Lord for what he has done to us, so that we continue to experience the power of the Lord in our own vocation story. And today I would like to share with you about Ignatian Contemplation, which will be useful for our prayer, along with the talk which Father gave today on our priesthood. The experts in Ignatian spirituality define Ignatian contemplation as a long, loving look at the reality. A long, loving look at the reality. That is something like a cat looking at a rat, that totally absorbed. You get into that scene through your using your imagination. And St. Ignatius says he divides the contemplation into three parts. One, persons. Number two, the event itself. Number three, consideration. So see the persons and then listen to their words, consider their action. That is how he will divide the Ignatian, his own contemplation. So take any event that Father has suggested today. I propose two. One is what he proposed yesterday, the baptism scene in the Lord, the life of Jesus. That is to say, Jesus is standing waiting to be baptized by John the Baptist, and you are standing in the line, and he is being baptized by John the Baptist. You hear the words of God the Father saying, "He is my beloved Son." Afterwards, Jesus himself is inviting you and he baptizes you. And afterwards, you hear the words, "You are my beloved Son in whom I am well pleased." This will be one contemplation that you can take. Number two, washing of the feet, which Father mentioned just now. As a priest, he himself said, "What is my vision and goal in my life?" Now he takes this contemplation. Imagine you are sitting with the apostles, and then Jesus comes to you after washing the feet of Peter. He comes to you and he washes your feet. How are you feeling? So, as I said, see, listen, consider the actions. What is it that this scene has to tell me? So first, get into the scene, not simply an observer, but as a participant, become part of the event, and you are able to participate in the event. As the event takes shape, become aware of your own feelings as you go through it. And later in colloquy, whatever you went through, just talk to Jesus. That will be one contemplation that you can take for today. The third one, in case you have time, take the Annunciation, the commitment of our Heavenly Mother to say yes to the Lord. And as a priest, I have said yes to the Lord. While you contemplate that particular scene, you be part of it and see our Heavenly Mother saying yes to the Lord, and go back when you join the Society of Jesus or when you join the religious congregation. And afterwards, examine your own life, your own vision, and today your mission and the goal for which you are living. So these things that might help you for your prayer. As I said yesterday, being the first day, it will be very difficult to calm your body and mind, and it may be difficult to also sit still. Be patient with yourself. Maybe if you can spend half an hour at a stretch, go ahead and do it. And if you are not able to spend half an hour, little less, and then keep raising or increasing your time of your prayer time. How to handle the distractions? As and when you become aware of your distraction, I suggest that you gently come back to your breathing, then you continue with your contemplation. I've also given you there one or two questions which Father has mentioned in his talks for your reflection. You will find whatever I have shared with you under the heading for prayer. That will definitely of great help to you. May the Lord guide us throughout the day.
I, the Lord of wind and flame, I will tend the poor and lame. I will set a feast for them My hand will say, finest bread I will provide, till their hearts be satisfied. I will give my life to them. Whom shall I say?